when the evacuations are being carried out in these humanitarian corridors established by the Syrian army?
Well, the only difficulty can be felt by the civilians themselves, because when they try to exit from the terrorist-held areas, sometimes terrorists are opening gunfire at them, and sometimes they're launching mortar corridor that the civilians are using to exit from the terrorist-held areas. But regarding the situation on the humanitarian corridor, on the areas, on the Syrian army positions where the civilians are reaching, there are no civilians, but there are large numbers getting out, and the Syrian government is working on delivering directly urgent needs, food and medicine, to those who are just coming out from eastern Al Ghouta. Then buses are being provided to the point where the civilians are reaching at the humanitarian corridor in Hamoria, for example. Then the civilians are being transported towards the temporary shelter center that the Syrian government established around eastern Al Ghouta, and the government held in safe side in Adra in particular, and other areas. So there are no difficulties for the Syrian army. The Syrian army dealt with a similar situation, as I told you, in Aleppo, for example, when also thousands of civilians exited from terrorist-held areas. This is a similar scene, a similar scenario. The Syrian government is prepared. We have been seeing how civilians getting out, how they are being taken care of and taken, of course, to the temporary shelter centers. And this is what is happening currently. But the fact that there are thousands others getting out, civilians, every day, means that the army should be also very well prepared, the Syrian army and the government, for hosting that large number of civilians. But according to the statements coming out from the Syrian government, everything is set up, and the Syrian government is ready to welcome as much as possible of civilians. The Syrian government says it is its duty to secure those civilians, to provide a shelter until the military operations end here in eastern Al Ghouta, and until reconstruction takes place in this area, and then the civilians can go back home.
Mohammed, in an earlier conversation we had, you mentioned that some of the militants in eastern Ghouta are now escaping to other areas. Can you tell us a little bit about the contingency plans that the Syrian army has to clear up those terrorists in neighboring areas of eastern Ghouta?
Yes, that's correct. Due to the Syrian and Russian fighter jets strikes on the terrorist positions here in eastern Al Ghouta, particularly on the right over here in Hazze and in other areas previously as the army was advancing, the terrorists, most of them are actually escaping to their backlines. They're going to other nearby terrorist-held towns where the Syrian army did not attack yet. They're seeking refuge in other areas. For example, in Saqba, when the Syrian army was attacking the terrorists, those terrorists escaped towards Hazze, which the town that you can see in the picture right now. And then the Syrian army started calming the streets and clearing this area. This is what is happening. The army is attacking one militant-held area after the other here in eastern Al Ghouta. Only in the southern part of eastern Al Ghouta now, there are only a few towns remaining where the terrorists are positioned. For example, Zamalka, Ain Tarma, Hazze, and Arbin. The terrorists are escaping and leaving behind some of their snipers in order, of course, fighters with sniper guns, in order to try to delay the army advances. But the army is able and is being able to advance. So this is the plan. The army's plan is to take one area after the other, tightening the noose on the terrorists over here in eastern Al Ghouta. As you know, eastern Al Ghouta has been divided into three militant-held areas, and also each area is under a tight siege by the Syrian army. So the Syrian army is taking one area after the other, tightening the noose, encircling further the terrorists, and decreasing the amount of areas, the space controlled and held by the terrorists over here, and then finally providing the terrorists with a proposal. If they wish, they can leave on buses towards Idlib. If not, the army's entry into those areas is definitely will be something for sure. The government is planning to continue with this military operation and continuing with this strategy of tightening the noose on the terrorists and then giving them two choices, whether leave on buses safely with their individual weapons towards Idlib, or they will be killed. The army is determined to purge this area, eastern Al Ghouta, of course. This is the plan, this is the strategy, this is what has been happening since the start of this offensive last February, which is cutting major terrorist supply lines, dividing terrorist-held areas, encircling them, imposing a tight siege on them, tightening the noose, and then taking control of one area after the other. This has been a successful strategy so far. Nearly 80% of the militant-held region of eastern Al Ghouta is now under the control of the Syrian army, but the only difficulty, of course, in the face of the Syrian army will be the presence of large numbers of civilians. But now, since that civilians are being able to get out, it seems that the army will be even much more rapidly advancing now, because there are no more civilians perhaps in areas that the army is attacking, and this would make it easier for the Syrian army to strike strongly the terrorists inside.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Press TV's Muhammad Ali joining us from eastern Ghouta in the Damascus countryside. Of course, we are going to keep you posted on all the details with regards to the clashes that are taking place in eastern Ghouta as the Syrian army continues its advance against the militants holed up in the area. We're going to return to the normal course of programming for now here on Press TV. Thanks for watching, everybody.